Steeler Fury. SteelerFury.com.
Hello and welcome again to another exciting edition of the Steeler Fury Pittsburgh Steelers Show, our pre-draft extravaganza week. This is episode 4, 5, I don't know. This is what we normally call our Steelers mock draft war room. It's a little different this year. Don't get afraid, but we're going to be making a Steelers board and then using that board in a real live mock draft that takes place over the next 3 nights. And all of that will be recorded for posterity that you can check it out. But this is just the first step of it. And to get us started, we have, of course, the 2 best cohorts if you're going to go through this hours-long process of trying to build a draft board that most teams put together over the course of 10 years, and we're going to try to put it together in like 2 hours, these are probably the right 2 cats to do it with from the greater Indianapolis area. Mr. Jeremy Kohlman is with us. How are you, sir?
Doing good. And this is one of those things where I like to go, what does Barney Stinson say? Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
And joining us from a, quote, frigid Orlando, Florida, Mr. Korey Karbowsky. Korey, what's the temperature there?
It's 70. If you're around Pittsburgh, you know how cold it could be. And I might not be there, but I'm sure you guys can relate with me on that.
Shiver me timbers at 70 degrees. Oh my, I'm going to have to be wearing a winter jacket.
Wind chill. Chill.
A hat, Korey, when you're getting frigid temperatures. So listen, so
there you go.
If you joined us last night, we talked about the Steelers' needs going into the draft based on what they did in the offseason. You also earlier in the week heard Perch give his opinions about, that nothing will really matter until Mike Tomlin is gone. But since that's probably not happening this week, unless we can manage to trade him for a first-round pick, I think we're gonna toe the line. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I sort of feel like we're gonna toe the line between a team that fits the Steelers as presently run, but yet hopefully what we think they will, should do rather than necessarily what they will do, right? So there's a little bit of each. I think we frequently get a player or 2 that they seem to be interested in, but we're picking for us. This is our joy. This is the only joy we have left with this team. So here we are.
We're done falling in line. Like you said, well, this is going to be our thing. We're not just going to be the good little soldier and pull the Steelers board to their heart's content. Screw that. Let's go for it.
You think so? It's unlikely that we'll have Jalen Milroe at the top of our board. Is that what you're trying to say right now?
Yeah.
Well, he finally brought. Well, since we recorded last night, they brought in a defensive lineman, an actual defensive lineman, and it was one that is a familiar name. Jeremy, I suppose you saw that today.
I thought it was Derek Harmon. Was he the guy that? Yeah,
he was. Yep. So the fact that they couldn't be bothered to go all the way out to Oregon, at least they had him fly in. So, So there is one. We have seen one defensive tackle, and the other news, Korey, as you so aptly put in our group chat, is that TJ. What do you make of the TJ Watt piece photo? Like, do you think he's just trolling? Do you think he's unhappy about his contract negotiations? They're trading him. Like, what mysteries are happening in the South Side?
I think I'd say trolling. I don't think it's anything. Maybe it's trolling with a speck of truth. That's probably my guess, but I don't think this is like a, receiver diva, take it for exactly what it says kind of thing. He'll be playing for us next year. I put a lot of money on that, and yeah. I feel like it's just trolling plus a little, I could be paid more, like,
yeah,
maybe trying to leverage a little bit, but
Jeremy, let me ask you this question. Which transaction sets the Steelers franchise back more? Drafting a project quarterback like Jalen Milroe to a team without the ability to really develop a project, drafting Jalen Milroe at 21, using that first round pick and not having another pick until the 3rd round, or signing TJ Watt to be the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history for a team that just gave up 300 yards and got crushed defensively in their last 4 or 5 games.
Logic says the Watt extension would, set this team back more because we just tie up more money in a pass rusher who's over the age of 30. But if Mike Tomlin is still coaching, it's the quarterback.
Good point.
It's one of those things where it's like, if everything's just going to stay the way it is, Watt is the more sure bet because you can at least count on him to probably make some sacks, every year, as to where you throw whatever quarterback they may or may not want to take. There's no guarantee they're going to develop. We saw that with Kenny Pickett. So I would say the quarterback with Mike Tomlin as coach.
Nice. I don't know, Korey, you want to weigh in before we move on?
Oh, no, I think Jeremy said it perfectly. That's about it.
Yeah, it's like, not that TJ Watt can't play. When he's healthy, he's been great. But, yeah, I just feel like, man, they had a defense with Cam Hayward playing at an all-pro level, with Mink Fitzpatrick in the back end, with Joey Porter Jr. that everybody, is pretty happy with at corner, with one of the highest paid off-ball linebackers in the league and the highest paid defensive player in the league, and maybe the highest paid non-quarterback pretty soon. And yet, yeah. So, all right. So we're going to try to solve some of that problem. Do you want to, I thought maybe what we would do is try to go through position by position rather than, like, usually we go from the beginning to the end, and we'll do that because we're going to try to put our board together and figure out what we're doing, what we would like to do, what our ideal scenario is. But maybe we'll go position by position and catch up with the three of us and figure out who are our guys in each position, and then we can kind of get a feel for where they fall in the draft. So in order to try to help us with that, I made this handy visual tool that if you have a great big monitor like me, you will enjoy seeing because it's got a lot of stuff on it. But do you want to start? Let's start in order of need. Do you want to start with defensive line, maybe?
You said start in order of need, Will.
Oh, quarterback? Sure.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing about quarterback. In this exercise, I've been working behind the scenes to try to, we've talked a little bit about some possible trades, and we've been working very hard to trying to maybe trade down from pick 21 and also put some feelers out for, what we might get in return for a couple of wide receivers, something like that. But I did make one, on the advice of my cohorts here, I did make one valiant attempt to trade for the number 1 overall pick. And what we offered was pick 121, a first rounder next year, and TJ Watt. And to be fair, the GM of Tennessee said, like, they would really consider that offer, except for they're trying to be true to what they think Tennessee will do. And Tennessee has already said they won't move down further than 3. So he didn't take it. But, like, if you could get Cam Ward for TJ Watt and 2 first-round picks, I'm taking that deal because I'm starting the build of my team around a quarterback that I think can actually take you somewhere. And I'm saying thank you for your service to TJ Watt. It's not like I'm trying to get rid of him, but if you can convert that into a elite franchise quarterback, which I think we think Cam Ward is. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that'll get you fired from your job if it doesn't work out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a crazy idea sending TJ Watt off after this year. I mean, hell, Ben Roethlisberger came out on his podcast and even said maybe they don't get a deal done and he goes off to a contender the year after. It's not like we're the only ones thinking all of a sudden that maybe TJ Watt wants to go chase a ring somewhere.
Yeah. But it's like, if you're going to do that, then trade him now. Set yourself up better for 2026 and get picks back, because if he leaves next year, the most you're going to get is a 3rd rounder 2 years from that. So it doesn't really, that to me isn't as big a help as what you could send him someplace he wants to go now, and maybe that would be better. So anyway, these are my thoughts. Do you guys? I'll start with you, Korey. Anybody on this list that you think, aside from Cam Ward, I think we're all in agreement that Cam Ward is the, really the toast of this group. Is anybody else in here that you could sort of stomach taking with a later round pick?
So, I mean, that I like Seth Hennigan. I like Lagasse, or Legis, however you pronounce his name. I think the one where it looks like me and you have a little bit of a departure, and I've had some highs and lows with him over the years, but I'm starting to come back around on Quinn Ewers. No, not Will Howard.
Ah, so you surprised me.
Yeah. I think just to touch on Will Howard, I think Will Howard's, could be a fine Nick Foles at like a 85th percentile outcome, which, that's fine. That's just not, we don't need Nick Foles. I think Quinn Ewers, and I've started to come around on him for this reason a little. And not a ton, not pick 21. I really wouldn't want to trade up for him in the round 2. We're talking he drops in the round 3, which I don't think will happen. But with Ewers, it's been kind of he played through injury this year. The reports is that he played through an injured lat. The arm talent's been there. The arm talent might not have been what it was this year, what it was the year before, but an injury explains that. A lot of his issues when I was looking at him the prior years, which didn't change at all, but that's more on the Texas coaching staff, I think, because he showed the ability. He had a sloppy body. He really got that in line. He got a lot more athletic, so it shows that he's willing to work through and improve on his issues. So the footwork thing, I think that's more of a product of the Texas offensive staff, and that's why he kind of is erratic accuracy wise. I think the arm talent's still there from where it was when he was a highly touted recruit in high school. That's just compared to the other guys, he's not super old. The arm talent, assuming the injuries kind of cleared up, could definitely be there. And I just feel like he offers a better blend of, potential and talent and just, his age, like when you compare it to basically everyone after Shedeur.
Yep.
And that's where I'd kind of like, if we took him in the 3rd, I'm really not like, there's a chance he ends up in being something decent. Maybe not an MVP. I don't know if he has that much juice, but a talented, good arm, the confidence to make the throws, which I think is a huge part of this that, some of these guys don't have, that he could be a starter for you down the line, where that's just one guy where it kind of stands out to me where, I'd say my piece on.
Well, I will say this. I have a sort of a, let's call him a Weidel Brothers adjacent source. So the last couple of years, it's been sort of useful to hear a little bit of perspective from those guys. Every once in a while, I'm sure they don't go telling everybody what they think about every player, but if you were friends with Andy Weidel and he and his brother are talking trash about some player, you probably take note of that, right? So for the purposes of our podcast, the two little tidbits I heard about quarterback were that they actually like Quinn Ewers, and that they do not like Shedeur Sanders. So take that for what it's worth out there in the audience.
That actually surprises me. Shedeur scream. I mean, granted, the pocket issues are a nightmare that I could see Tomlin really getting scared of, but like everything else about his game, aside from the pocket presence, is like Tomlin brand football.
Oh no, but that's Tomlin. I'm talking about Weidel's.
Oh yeah.
So from the standpoint of those two guys, who I think are have influence, but not necessarily that much pull, right? So they're going to put the plate in front of you or the buffet in front of you, but the coach is still going to take the same 3 dishes he takes every time, because that's probably what he does. How about you, Jeremy?
I like this vertical board for the most part. I will say there's one guy late that I would super stay away from, and that is Connor Bazelak. I think you and I see him in a very different light, but if we're just going by guys that we could take later, that's fine. But that's a guy that I do not like at all.
Well, there you go. Let's see. Well, that's okay.
He is a firm blue to me.
Well, blue is just they went to the combine, but what in this case?
Oh, okay.
We're just gonna cross out poor Connor. It's okay.
Yeah,
I'm not that attached. I'm not that attached to him. I just it was dumpster diving for quarterbacks.
Yeah, so I've seen that train wreck at Indiana, then on to Bowling Green. So like I've seen it like firsthand, and the guy is deer in the headlights when pressure gets there. He's like, "Oh shit, I have to get rid of the ball no matter what," and that is a huge problem.
This is the Curtis Rourke territory, I mean, no, it's Michael Penix territory. That was the thing you were scarred from Penix as well last year.
Yeah, maybe, but
Yeah, at any rate, well, who do you like?
I actually like Brady Cook a lot. Kind of late round guy. If there's ever a guy that's, kind of going to be that like Brock Purdy type of quarterback, maybe in that last round or whatever. I'm not saying he's as good as Brock Purdy, but he's a good leader. He knows where to go with the ball most of the time. He usually doesn't make too many mistakes. He actually can run, decently well and kind of run around and extend plays. I'm not saying he's dual threat by any means, but
Yeah.
I've always kind of been a fan of Brady Cook. Later, even undrafted free agent guy. It's like I
Yeah.
could see that guy sticking around a team for a long, or just the NFL.
Yeah, I think he's gotten a bit of a bad rap, and and for valid reasons. There was some skepticism about him, but I feel like compared to some of these other guys who are consensus slotted ahead of him, I would agree with you. I wanted to mention guys like Laga and Hunter Deckers. I feel like those guys they're headed for the UFL. They're going to be like those guys that show up in the UFL and you're like, where did this guy come from? And he looks pretty good. Like I wonder if he would translate, but they seem like lifer. Laga is the guy that came in the game for Utah State a couple of years ago for his first appearance, and he threw a 75-yard touchdown pass or something on the first play, and that's sort of set the tone for his career. He's a bit of a gunslinger, but the guy,
is that where he is now? Still,
no. Cooper Laga went to Tulsa.
Okay, that's why I like the funny thing is you say that play and I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like it's come up on my YouTube feed multiple times. Like I remember seeing it when it happened like live because I was like switching games and I was like, oh shit, this kid's got some
he also had a game
but...
he had a game this year at Tulsa where they had some kind of big comeback and he just was like he was threading the needle on deep balls and doing stuff that you're just like, wow, like where did this guy come from? But he's he's closer to what Josh Allen was as a passer in college than you would like him to be but as far as like a guy if he comes into your team as an undrafted free agent, you're going to be happy.
Has he been there like the past 2 years?
2 years, yeah.
Well, he's been working with Kevin Wilson then, former IU head coach who went on to be an offensive coordinator at Ohio State. So,
Yep.
I mean, it's not like Wilson hasn't put some quarterbacks in the league. Nate Sudfeld
Right.
from IU, he's put helped several Ohio State quarterbacks out a little bit.
Well, funny that you say that because the guy that of this group, I don't really think I want to spend a round 2 or round 3 pick on anybody on this list. I mean, you guys could talk me into yours or Cook, but to me, Ben Woldridge would be worth taking a flyer at the end of round 7. So Ben Woldridge started at Fresno State, and this is the reason I mentioned he played for Tedford there. And Tedford is a guy that if you started with him, he sets you straight, right? And so the thing about Woldridge, if you watch him, he is and by the way, I'm going to attach a YouTube playlist of these players that we're discussing today, right? So you'll be able to look at some of their highlights and tape. But the thing about Ben Woldridge is the footwork, the delivering the ball quickly, the reading, like all the stuff that's like quarterback polish that a lot of these guys don't have in college. He has a terrific foundation. So I feel like the floor for him is backup quarterback, one of those very dependable backup quarterbacks that helps you install a system, that helps you teach younger players and so on and so forth. So he's a little overaged. He's much like Tyler Shugg in terms of he had some injuries. I think he came out the same year as Shugg. But he literally, I think, could make a roster and play early if they needed him to. Maybe not, ever going to be superior, arm talent down the field, but in the intermediate and short range, he's a guy that could move the football. I like his it a lot. So am I okay saying, right now we'll sort of leave these 3 as possibilities and we're going to miss Seth Hennigan? I mean, Seth Hennigan, I like him, but I'm not sure that there's enough there. He didn't wow me in the All-Star season. It makes me wonder if he was more a product of, where he played in the system.
Yeah.
But I really liked him. Like I had him higher on my list, earlier in the season. But anyway, Korey, are you good with that for now?
Yeah, that's good with me.
Yeah.
Okay, that gives us sort of one in the middle and 2 late to think about, which I think is pretty
it's a good jumping off point.
Okay, so
Guys, what about Shooter round 1?
well, I mean, they might do it.
I don't. Steelers board can pass up on that one though.
No, I think I feel like Sanders and Dart and Milrow are all going to go round one, and it's just a question of if Ewers will join them. Ewers and Shug maybe have an outside chance, but I feel like this year is more like last year than it is like the year before, the Kenny Pickett year. That was a discussion I was having with somebody today. Was is this going to be more like Kenny Pickett is the only quarterback drafted in the whole first round? I have a hard time seeing that. I know people talk about the landing spots. People, the Browns, the Giants, maybe the Raiders, along with obviously Tennessee, and then there's New Orleans and Pittsburgh. The thing about New Orleans is that Garrett Nussmeier's father is the offensive coordinator there. So unless he's getting fired, I would say Nussmeier, the player, plays for LSU. His father is the offensive coordinator. Unless he absolutely crashes and burns in 2026, I have a feeling that they have that pick already written out and ready to hand to the commissioner. So I still feel like teams are going to want to get into round one and get that fifth-year contract with these guys, but not for me. It's not for me. All right, so where do you want to go next? Defensive tackle? Is that the next need?
I think is that how the roster currently is. I would say defensive tackle is the next.
Sweet. So I separated them into two types because I feel like I can see us. I'm looking ahead to the future. I can see us drafting one of each in this draft because I feel like we definitely need a 5-tech or the 5-tech who moves to a pass rushing 3-tech. Or something like that, an interior pass rusher in nickel, and then it feels like they need I would like to see them have a bigger guy. This is what we talked about last night, a bigger defensive tackle who'd be more like a 1-tech, but who gives you some penetration and some juice behind the line of scrimmage instead of just being a run stopper. That would be my ideal, but I kind of separated them into those two groups. So I'll start with you, Jeremy. You tell me in these tackle groups, who stands out to you?
Well, I'll be honest. There are very few defensive tackles that I don't like, just because they're. I mean, let's face it, guys. I think I was listening to something the other day. They could see something along the lines of 30 defensive tackles taken in like the first, 5 or 6 rounds of this draft, just because that's how ridiculously deep we are at defensive tackle here.
Yeah.
Let me see here.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this a little bit the right size.
I know you're good.
It's a challenge with the way I'm broadcasting right now, but okay, I think
No, you're good.
How's that? Does that look all right?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
That's good. Let's see here. I'd say you and me are very much on the same page with TJ Sanders. We kind of texted about it. I think he could be a really good player that's just being completely overlooked kind of in this, very deep class. He's very good against the run. He's pretty good as a pass rusher and can get better. And it's more coaching points with him rather than lack of ability. So I think his ceiling could just shoot up with the right coaching. Remains to be seen if Carl Dunbar can do that or not.
Is it still Carl Dunbar? I was wondering this question the other day. Did he move up or I for some reason had this vague memory that he's not there anymore? But here, I'll look it up while we're talking.
Yeah. I thought he was still there.
Okay. So sorry to interrupt you. TJ Sanders.
No, you're good. But TJ Sanders, favorite of mine, guy I'm coming around a lot on, who you have in yellow farther down on the D2 3/5 technique, is Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. A lot of people just think that he has just been kind of buried on the Georgia defensive depth chart, for the last several years with, the guys they put in and out of the league constantly.
Yeah.
He's 6'5", 285 or whatever. And I think I was reading something the other day where he is completely comfortable gaining weight to move and play inside, or even moving down weight and playing more outside. So like he's that versatile type of guy who I just think is just barely scratching the surface of his talent because he's barely played.
Yeah.
And even when he did, I think this year, I think he had 5.5 sacks as a rotational defensive lineman for Georgia. Something crazy, for a guy who wasn't even starting for them most of the time.
Yeah.
Because he's splitting time with him, Warren Brinson. There's quite a few guys on that defensive line. Nazir Stackhouse, which is also on this list.
Mm-hmm.
But
you
he's
can
kind
see
of a
why the
guy
guys from you can see why the guys from Georgia do well in Philly, because they're like, you already know how it is to like play on a team with like so many guys that you're not going to get all the spoils, but it's like they're used to their roles and coming in and out of the game and stuff like that. I think you're
Mhm.
my thing about Dawkins, the reason I have him yellow to start was just size. I mean, it's hard for me to
Sure.
imagine that they're going to have a 275-pound, 280-pound tackle add to a team that's having trouble with stopping the run in base or nickel.
Mhm.
But if you think, if you think he's somebody that can play bigger than that, I'm all for it. I mean, I think that's a great idea.
The funny thing is, you look at him, he is a skinny dude at 6'5". Like, he doesn't look like, he looks like one of those guys that was sculpted from clay, from Zeus, because it's just all muscle, no fat. So it's like, I feel like he could go put on another, 15 to 20 pounds, not lose any of his athleticism. Because that was kind of the major question was, if he puts on weight, can he keep the same athleticism? If he goes down, can he still, hold up against the run and stuff? And I listened to an interview and he said, I'm comfortable with going up. I'm comfortable with going down. You put me on the field, you won't regret it type of guy. So that's why I really like him. It seems like he's got the right mindset.
By the way, shout out to our friend Blue Ridge Bronco Gabe, who's been with us on the drafted team and the board draft. He mentioned something to me earlier this year about how he has been he's big into interviews. So any prospects that he's really interested in, he goes and digs up their interviews. And I started doing it this year as well. Like, I started after he told me that, I was like, yeah, it's actually a really good idea. And previously, once in a while, I would like catch somebody and see, do they sound like they are a guy that I want to be working with. But it's interesting that I think that's a great thing to do with prospects that you might be interested in.
The one last name I'll kind of throw out there, you have him under 0-1 technique. Eric Gregory from Arkansas.
Yeah.
He's got a good first step, and he is rarely moved. Like, I was just watching Arkansas tape, and it's like he is pretty quick for his size, and this is a kid that does not get moved off the point of attack. Like, he just holds his spot. And I was just thinking, man, if there's ever a draft where, Pittsburgh needed help defending the run. Oh, wait, that's this one. To get, that late round guy that's just like an immovable object. I just thought Eric Gregory really stood out to me, when I was watching tape for draft a team, for late round defensive guys that would fit.
I agree with that take. I'm going to throw it to Korey in a second. I agree with that take. I would just say, I don't think he's dynamic. Like, I would love to have somebody who I think can really wreck a running game, but who's also and hold a point, but is also like can give you something when teams pass against you, because you're just going to get that. You get that look. The teams are going to throw it against you, and you're going to have to show them that your big people can still push the pocket or whatever. That was my.
Yeah, he's that. So sorry, I was just about to say he's that fourth defensive lineman that you want in there defending the tush push, just to like go out there and try to just whack the shit out of whoever is coming, through that 0-1 tech line. It's like that guy does not get moved. It's like those guys do have a spot, but I agree he's not much of a pass rusher. The few times he's gotten to the quarterback, it's more been out of just opportunistic fortune.
Well, having Landon Jackson next to you helps too.
That does help.
Korey, what's your take on this immense, incredible defensive tackle class? Is it little like running backs? Like you could just put them all in the hat and pick two out and you'd be happy?
I don't think it's to that degree, but it's a damn deep class. Like, especially, I feel like it doesn't have the depth of running back where there's going to be multiple UDFAs that are just studs. But I'm surprised Jeremy didn't bring him up because IU guy and all. It's really easy to hang your hat on CJ West. Like, he's got the combine numbers to back him up. He's got good looking tape. He's got like the advanced analytics, like the depth of tackle numbers and stuff like that backing him up. Like, that's a guy where he could definitely outperform wherever he's drafted if these numbers are, holding true. And that's a guy where I would not be that afraid to hang my hat on if I was a GM.
Do you think you guys you know him better than I do? Do you think he's a one tech or a three tech in real
I
life?
would say three. Jeremy watched him more than I could have this year, but I would
I,
probably say three.
I would say 3 too.
Okay.
He's quick enough and strong enough to a degree where he can walk someone back. My only thing, and I didn't want to bring CJ West up because I didn't want to be like a total homer and be like, oh, we have to draft a ton of Hoosiers this year because we were actually good for a change. But he's a good player. Another guy I've listened to interviews with. He interviews really well. He's a professional. I think he's already got a wife and a daughter. So he's got his priorities straight. He's a good character type of dude. Little bit of a leader on the IU defense this year. Good player, just maybe not someone I'd like pound my fist on, but I'd be happy if Pittsburgh was like, well, this CJ West kid's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed. I just feel like, man, it's so tough. Trying to decide what is the combination that actually works, right? But Korey, you have somebody else to talk about?
I'll get to my guy that you guys know last, but I'll also say Alfred Collins. For him being as big as he is, as strong as he is, to play with the pad level and the hands and extension that he does, I think it's just freaky. That's a guy where if he's that disciplined and that sound with his technique in the run game, he's going to figure out pass rushing with that length, like how a Calais Campbell kind of does with that size. Like he's so sound with his hips, with his hands. It's just mind blowing to me. Like this guy is probably one of the best run stuffers I've seen in the past couple drafts. And he might not have that pass rushing production immediately, but I think he's going to figure it out if he's as sound as he is in the run game. What were you going to say, Jeremy?
Well, I was going to say he kind of reminded me of Stephon Tuitt a little bit when I was watching him, just kind of this raw power guy that will figure out the pass rushing, kind of like you said or whatever, because Tuitt wasn't a great pass rusher initially when he got to Pittsburgh, but towards his prime, those years like 4 and 5, and all of a sudden it was like, ooh, Tuitt complements Hayward really well and can actually pass rush a little bit. So I would agree with you in that sense where he can figure out the pass rushing stuff later.
Just my 2 cents on Alfred Collins. My biggest issue with him is he's a little bit older. So the fact that he is more polished in terms of his pad level and playing the run is what I would expect from an older player that's had a couple more years on defensive line, a good program. And the thing about the pass rush is, yes, it might come, and maybe that's also something that he can learn to do better. But that's that. It just makes me think, all right, I really like him, but in a class where I'm going to be super nitpicky with defensive linemen, I'm looking for more ascendant players. I think Collins is more polished, and you're right, could step into an NFL team and help you right now in rundowns and figure it out. Like I 100% agree with that, but this Bakers can afford to be choosers a little bit this year, I think.
Yeah. I'll rattle off some guys that I like, just that I don't need to go into. I like Jamari Caldwell. I like Desmond Watson, actually. I feel like that guy's gonna be pretty damn good whenever he.
Okay, can I just say, since you brought him up, all right, so his jump that he did, okay, if you do this analytic thing with me in terms of the explosive power that's generated by your size and then measured with the broad jump and the high jump, right? He did a jump that tracks with one of the highest numbers like I've ever recorded. So it's right. It's not the highest, but it's certainly in like the top 1% of everybody that tested. And he did it in bare feet. He did it in bare feet. Can you imagine a 400 some pound guy jumping in bare feet? There's no chance that he jumped in bare feet the way that he would jump if he was just wearing like basketball shoes or something, like, right? So I feel like the athleticism is crazy for someone of his size. And then you watch his tape and it's like he's throwing guys out of the club. I don't know. Like what's the Korey? Like, what weight does he? If he comes into the league, what weight does he have to play at to be Ted Washington? Because I think that's the guy. You maybe not you don't know who Ted Washington is probably, right? But Ted was 4 bills, played in the league. He was listed at 370 or something. Played for the Patriots and was just for an incredibly long and decorated career was the best run stuffer in the league. So I feel like that's sort of
What did he weigh in at for his pro day? Like what was the official weight?
you talking about Desmond Watson?
Yes.
Yeah, gotta
It
go.
was 460 something, was
Yeah,
it?
I
I
got
thought
it here in
so.
a second. Desmond Watson. See, I have all the numbers. Those of you who are going to get to see my sheet that has everything on it. He weighed 464, 605,
464.
464.
Get down to even 415, and I think that's close to enough. Get him under 400, and I think it's a serious problem for the league. That's
Yeah.
my kind of stance on it.
I feel like, he doesn't look in such bad shape that he can't stay on the field. Like that's to me I've seen guys come into the draft who weighed 400 pounds who literally just 2 plays and then they're off the field. And when you watch Florida, like they had a guy in Cam Jackson that they obviously really liked. So it wasn't, I don't think they were sending Watson to the bench because he was not in good enough shape. I think they sent him to the bench just because they liked the other guy better on passing downs, or more passing situations. But man, when he was in the game, he didn't look winded. He gives good effort. It would be hard to believe he was 464 pounds when you saw him play on the field. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where he slots. Like he's listed here at 73, or excuse me, at where did he end up coming in? 240. So round 7. As a round 7 like throwaway, like dang.
Shot, yeah.
I mean, if we were going to throw a 6th-round pick on Daniel McCullers back in the day,
Yeah, there's
another
no
massive guy who couldn't move. Like, I mean, I'd be willing to take the exact same stance on this guy.
No,
Like,
no, Desmond Watson can move. He
no,
can play
I
basketball.
know. That's what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
he's better, and he's 120 pounds more
Yeah.
than what Daniel McCullers was.
100%. Yeah. So go ahead, Jeremy. I mean, I'm sorry, Korey.
I've been a Pat Jenkins guy for 3 years. He's got pass rushing juice.
My guy.
Not sure, like, you've got him in the right spot, 3'5". I don't know if he's lengthy. Like he's a little weird because he's not super lengthy for a 3 or a 5. He's more one of those, like, he's gonna kill you on like those passing downs as a 0. So I don't know 100% what he's going to slot into, like every down wise, but he's got juice. He's like he hustles. He's a playmaker. He's got a little X factor.
Yeah, I feel like he'd be like an ideal wave rusher, interior rusher, like the number 5 defensive lineman on your team that comes in those situations and goes for it. Yeah, but I agree with you. At 6'2", 293, like I'm not really sure. In the way the league is going now, those tackles are all like 6'3" to 6'6". So it
wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't like have the biggest wingspan either. Like just looking at how he plays, he uses his hands well, but I don't think he's like a keep him off you kind of guy.
Yeah, and I mean Aaron Donald would be like the obvious exception that people will throw at you, but that's a rare breed. So, but I love Patrick Jenkins' motor, and like I could see him, like I said, making the team and contributing for sure.
I'll just put my stamp on Deion Walker. I'll let Will get that one in a minute, but I've got to do my little soapbox on Jordan Phillips.
I was wondering when that was coming.
So how did I guess?
Yeah, I was a teammate of his for 2 years in high school. I talked to him fairly often still. I've been around, I played college football. I've been around collegiate wrestlers, collegiate football players. I've been around a lot of hard workers. This guy is like, it's one of those dudes that there's probably going to be stories told about his work ethic in 10, 15 years, even if he ends up being 4 TFL a year kind of guy and plays 12 years in the league. He doesn't party, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, It's clean as a whistle. All he cares about and all he's cared about since I knew him when he was 14 years old was he said, I'm going to go out, I'm going to play 3 years of college football, and I'm going to declare early. And he said, and I'm going to have a 15-year NFL career. And he's on track for that. He's 2 to 3 lifts a day. If you are at all concerned about his Tennessee transfer, I'll air this out. Tennessee was the school that he enrolled early into his senior year, and he was looking to learn the playbook. And their D-line coach didn't want to do it because, that's GA jobs. The GAs didn't want to do it. So there was a come to Jesus meeting with him to tell him that he needs to stop worrying about football so much and he needs to go out and get a life and go to some parties. And that kind of explains what's happened to Tennessee's program the last, at the tail end of that, and how that Hendon Hooker year kind of spiraled out of control, if that was the mentality. But Maryland, if you read the reports, you see the lifting numbers, it all makes it's whatever they say about the work ethic. Imagine more. He's going to be a guy who's 24/7 football, all about business. As a player, I'm not going to comment too much on that, because if you've ever seen a picture of him and I say anything bad about him, you might not want to.
Did he wrestle in your class when you were practicing? You were on a wrestling team together, right?
So he was my wrestling partner as well. So he wrestled my junior year, my junior year. We had been around each other a bit, but I placed second at districts. He placed fourth. We didn't happen to run into each other. Then he came over the year after, and he was my wrestling partner throughout the year. And we were both state ranked wrestlers, and we wrestled with each other in the room, spent a lot of time around each other. But no, he's a load. That was back when he was about 270. He's about 315, 320 iron solid now. It's pretty ridiculous. Yeah. But super explosive, crazy hips, crazy power. At dead minimum in the NFL, he's going to jack up some centers and guards, put them in the backfield, and create havoc.
Well, and then just to add to that very quickly, one of the other things is he's one of the youngest players in this draft class. He's not even 21 yet.
Yep.
He won't turn 21 until June 30th. So he's super young. So, I mean, that's a guy where you're thinking by the time contract 3 rolls around, he's not even going to be 30 years old.
Yeah, that's the list of guys that are that young, or it just amazes me. But as you said, he had the goal ahead of time to get there. So, that's like if you're a hard worker. So you're a hard worker and you have some talent, man. That is the way to go.
He said that from the moment that he walked in. I'm trying to think, because that was the summer of 2019 going into 2020. So as a 14-year-old, that was the claim he made.
Wow.
Amazing. All right. So I'm going to make I'm just going to make some quick ones, first of all, because the line is this position group is so deep and we could be here for 5 hours talking about players we love. And I would love that. I just don't know if the world is ready for a 5-hour podcast. So the quick ones, let's start with that 0-1 tech group. Like I said, I'm looking for, something special out of the bigger players that I think can do something. I'm all aboard of the Desmond Watson train, but there's no doubt that he's a guy that is going to be, he's not going to be on the field in 3rd and long, right? So he's not going to give you much if teams want to pass against you. He did fine against that, rushing the passer, in limited opportunities, but I don't know that I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe he could do more than that, but I would like to see him at 415 pounds first before I say that. The guys like Caldwell and Phillips and Tyreek Williams, I think, are all they're successfully hold the point and push the pocket back. They're great, better against the run, I would say, than they are necessarily as pass rushers. But yeah, they're all solid guys. I'm not going to complain about any of that. I put Zeke Biggers on here. I think Zeke Biggers has gotten sort of pigeonholed into this group of, I'm a good run stopper, but I'm not a good pass rusher. There's a guy that creates a lot of problems, a lot of havoc in the interior of the offense. Also, a good kick blocker and special teams, which is a nice thing to have on your team. But the more I watch Georgia Tech to try to watch him play, the more I see him making plays that aren't necessarily stat sheet plays. So like pressures and, pushing the pocket and making the quarterback escape into someone else sacking, that kind of thing. He was way more active than I expected him to be for someone of his size. And then at the combine, he tested like in the, what do they call like a third sigma player. So he's also a really crazy tester, much like Jordan Phillips was. So I feel like, that's more in the ballpark of what I was looking for. And then two guys, the guy at the bottom there, Kayonta Hamilton from Rutgers. I feel like you play at Rutgers or you play west of the Mississippi, but not in California. Like you might as well not exist for the draft community. You know what I mean? They're those guys are toiling in obscurity. Kayonta Hamilton is like he is almost a clone of Keanu. What's up with the Steelers?
Benton.
Yeah, Keanu Benton. He's maybe a little better against the run than Benton is, but he looks and plays and is built pretty much exactly like him. So I have a feeling that if the Steelers, whoever scouted Keanu Benton is going to look at Keontae Hamilton, I think that's a dude that I want to have on my team. Jarrett Harrison Hunt, I didn't put him on here because I don't know if he's the best fit for a modern Steelers offense, and he's a year over aged or whatever. But he would be like the classic 5 tech of the Steelers of the 90s, and but that can give you some pass rushing or whatever. Once again, a player that I wouldn't mind seeing in later rounds, but there's just so many players at defensive tackle in this draft that it's just hard to, if the guy isn't like perfect at this point, he's going to get pushed down a little bit. But my guy through and through, I think I may be higher on him than anybody in the world, is Deion Walker. I kind of think, I think he's a top 10 player in this class. What do I have him listed there? 6. So maybe a top 6 player in this class.
Wow.
But here's the thing about Deion Walker. He has, in terms of what I call splash plays, tackles for loss, sacks, interceptions, forced fumbles. He has produced 50% more, not 1%, not 10%, 50% more than Derek Harmon and TJ Sanders. He almost has the combined number of those two together. Okay. And that's including a year where he played with spondylosis injury in his back and a blood infection that was so bad that he had to miss a game. So apparently what I heard was he hasn't really been able to train or work out for months. It's finally, he just got back on the beam sort of at the end of the season. But I feel like when that dude was 19, he wrecked the SEC. He wrecked it. He had as good a season for a defensive lineman as anybody's ever had in the SEC, So I talked to, I told you I have a source that's like Weidel adjacent, Jason. I have an NFL medical source, and he tells me that, especially in the lower back, which is where which Deion Walker's injury was totally treatable and is not something that's recurrent or considered to be a risk going forward. So if the guy who was still pretty good, he was still a late 3rd round draft pick based on his 2024 play. If he's really the guy you saw in 2023, I mean, that guy to me is the sky is the limit. He is the size of 360 pounds or whatever, the size of a nose tackle, but he plays like a 3 tech or can give you even outside pass rush. He can move up and down the line. So in terms of the Steelers' needs and what's valuable in the NFL, what's the need is somebody who can be disruptive on the interior, and so you can't any longer double team TJ Watt and double team Cam Hayward. That's one. Number 2, this position flexibility between what we think of as base and the nickel, and being able to do various things along the line in different situations. I think he's as good at being able to do that. So that's my pitch. It's admittedly a home run swing. Like Derek Harmon, TJ Sanders, those are solid picks that there's probably very high floor. Deion Walker, the floor is lower because it could just be that he's not as good, and the pad level never gets more corrected, even though it looked a little better at the Senior Bowl. But yeah, if it works for him, then that's the guy. So I guess it boils down to, for the three of us, it's something for you two to think about when we're putting our concept together is, are we swinging for the fences? Are we trying to like play it safe because we've had some struggles in picking round one picks the last few years? That's a more philosophy question. But if we're swinging for the fences, then that's my dude. Corey, did I miss anything?
No, I think, I mean, probably, honestly, with this D-line class, but I hit most of the key points.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Deion Walker, because I know that's a guy that
Oh, with the
you've liked for
no,
some time.
the big thing for me is when he was it's like a souped up version of what I said about Quinn Ewers. When he was healthy, he, I mean, they talked about him. This guy's a top 3 pick. Like that was a universal consensus agreement that this guy's a top 3 pick. And then I wouldn't want to be it's safe to pass on him. That's the thing. It's safe to pass on him. But the teams who are sharp, who are willing to take the gamble, have a chance to have a 10-year all-pro and a dude who's as big as he is, who can rush the passer and just dominate. Like it's like the level of dominance Chris Jones has. I think that's where he could end up if it's panned out. So that's who's going to take the risk. That's the question.
I love him for the same reason I love Chris Jones coming out. It's just like you said, just the pure disruption. You could just see what a problem he was for offenses, man. And like, Chris Jones is like, to me, that one of the keys to Kansas City's success for the Super Bowl run is that you just have this guy that no matter where he lines up, your whole offensive line, your whole offensive structure is like, will this play work with that guy lined up there? Do we have it accounted for? So, before you snap the football, the Troy Polamalos of the world, you got to know who that guy is. And I think he could develop into that kind of a guy. The pad level thing is his thing. It's a real thing, but it's like, man, if he was killing the SEC and some really good interior offensive linemen in the SEC with his pad level being all over the place, it kind of makes you wonder. It's like, maybe even if he gets 15% better at it, might be enough. Anyway, okay, so we've obviously taken a lot of time, but those were big needs. You want to, while we're tackling big needs, you want to talk about running backs for a second?
Oh,
I'm good with that.
I'll start. I don't think Lan Larison is the player for the Steelers because he's kind of fills the role that Kenny Gainwell fills. So it's like it's not a match for if I believe they like Kenny Gainwell and they like Jalen Warren as part of their rotation. So I don't want to my preference would be to not bring a guy in who duplicates that. But Lan Larison, for those of you who watched the episode prior to this, was my B2B Directional State Player of the Year. I don't know if you guys caught the video of the all 22 highlights of Lan Larison playing football, or if you've seen UC Davis play at all. But it may be the most incredible cut up I have ever seen, especially of a running back. His contact balance is crazy. He's running full speed down the sideline. Guys are like tiptoeing down the sideline sort of, but he's not worried about falling out of bounds. He's running full speed right next to the sideline. And guys hit him as he's running full speed down the sideline, and he does not go out of bounds. Like I can't remember seeing anybody like that who isn't so giant that he just brushes off tacklers, whatever. This is just he would be the biggest back on the Steelers. He's 215 pounds, but he's, anyway, great pass catcher, incredibly productive, 4-way special teamer. He's a gunner on punts, a very good one as well. He's the guy you have lined up to catch the onside kick. He's a kick returner, punt returner. So like a guy that could do a little bit of everything. If they hadn't signed Kenny Gainwell, I would be all over that. I'm higher than most on Montrell Johnson. I think Montrell Johnson and Raheem Sanders are similar in this way. They're both, a lot of carries, a lot of mileage, but have been really productive players. Montrell Johnson, I think, might be the best pure runner in the class. And the knock on him is usually that he's not that great a pass catcher because he isn't putting up huge pass numbers, but Florida just doesn't throw it. They don't throw it to the backs. They haven't for a really long time now. And I've seen him a couple of balls that were poor throws that he snagged effortlessly, like without losing a step of where he was going, still looking downfield or whatever, which I really value that to me, running back for the NFL, they have to be able to pass protect and their catching has to be not a catch and gather and then take off. It has to be like an effortless part of their, all one motion. I think he qualifies for that. Raheem Sanders has his flaws. I know Korey will come in and say that he's not quick enough, but in terms of his in the hole, but really hard to argue with the production as an all around back. The guy, I'll leave one of these guys to Korey, who I know is going to go there, but to me the best fit for the Steelers is Damian Martinez. He was number one in college football in short yardage, converting third and short and fourth and short, which when you have the other two guys on the team are not really short yardage backs, I feel like would be a huge thing. He hit one of the, if not the highest speed in game of any running back in the class at something like 22 miles an hour. So he's a known as being a sort of a bigger back that's good in short yardage, but he also has like that top gear, which the Steelers have really missed over the last couple of years. So to me, I feel like also where the value for him, I think he will be available in round 4. And if you get a guy like that in round 4 to complete your mission, I feel like that's a pretty good choice. Korey, I'll go to you.
You can go, Jeremy. I can.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry,
sorry.
I want to butt in here really quick because I don't know if you guys remember a conversation that we had a little over a year ago. I actually was doing my homework on Damian Martinez as a 2024 drafted team player. I was because I was going through late round running backs at the time, and I was like, who the hell is this Damian Martinez kid at Oregon State? I was like, this kid is phenomenal. How is no one talking about him? And then he goes and transfers to Miami, where he gets completely overlooked for the most part because, let's face it, it's the Cam Ward show. Yeah. And on top of that, in his 2 years at Oregon State, he averaged 6.1 yards a carry, right? He runs the ball almost 50 times less this year in 2024, still goes over 1,000 yards, but averages 6.3 yards a carry against much better level of competition than what Oregon State was probably facing.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, by the way, I'll add one more thing. That you guys as football heads will really appreciate. Mm-hmm. The Oregon State, they ran a power system, right? So it was like, straight ahead, downhill running. Mm-hmm. Miami's running zone and outside. So it's like he excelled in two completely different systems with two completely different kind of offensive philosophies, and both as the guy that carried their team and the guy that was like, integral, but not necessarily the number one part of their team. It's like, that's a ringing endorsement for me. So,
yeah. And then, one last thing before we throw it to Korey. I literally texted you guys at the beginning of this football season, or for college football season, and said, now this was a little overzealous at the time, but I was like, the best back in the college football is Damian Martinez. Now, obviously that was a little overshot with, but I was like, that's how effusive and excited I was about Damian Martinez. So Korey, I'll let you take it from here.
I'll keep this. I mean, I could talk about it damn near every one of these guys. Yeah. The one big one, and I'll talk about, it's been my 3 guys since last year. Devin Neal, DJ Giddens, RJ Harvey. Those have been my guys since last year. They did nothing to change my mind since then. DJ Giddens, it's like he glides on the football field. Running the ball looks so natural to him. He's just someone I would bank. Like he has an aesthetically pleasing running style. he just finds the right crease. He can shrug guys off. Like he's just a really nice, fun to watch running back. I would be pretty surprised if he was just a big bust. I didn't think he was going to test as well as he did. I'm glad for his sake he did. There's so many backs that it's hard to really be like, now we can't get Giddens. I'd still be fine. I really just shot him up to where I had him anyways. So Giddens is just an awesome runner. Will highlighted him real quick. Devin Neal, been my guy for a long time. He has superb vision. I think he might be, if not the best, one of the best zone runners in this class. He has a super nice jump cut where he can really make linebackers look silly. If you have a line that's getting the linebackers for him, he's going to be a serious problem. Kind of a more squatty back, bit more juice than like a Jalen Warren, but a little, better vision. And then RJ Harvey, we saw the highlights of him this year. It's a shame that UCF team wasn't very good because he deserved a lot more spotlight than he got this year. He was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Natural receiver, very natural runner as well. Can run dudes over, can outrun you. Very elusive in space. Like corners just don't bring him down. He's a perfect lightning to someone's thunder. Now, the only thing about all three of those guys is Kenneth Gainwell is basically brought in to do exactly what those guys do. So kind of I'll just have to watch those guys somewhere else. But I love each one of those guys. I have for a while now. And they, unlike, some other guys I've liked in the past, they really they just kept the ball rolling this year. They were excellent.
Yeah. I mean, I really honestly, anybody who's on this list, even the ones that wouldn't be my first choice personally, I would be happy with any of them. That's 30 guys listed on there that if you told me one of them was going to be the starting or 50-50 starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2025, I would be like, all right, like, let's go get it, right? I'm not, some of the guys that are higher, I'm a little bit less high on than the consensus, but man, what a class. Jaquindon Jackson, like, hell, you could, if that were your running back, like, I'd be excited. I get a jersey, man. That kid can play. Quentin Cooley, I don't know if you guys watch Liberty football at all. For some reason, I see a lot of those Thursday and Tuesday night games. But Quentin Cooley is one of the best short yardage backs. He was, if I had to score from the 1 or 2 yard line in a big game, he would be a top 3 choice for me in this class. So he's very, very good at that kind of thing. And do you guys, are you familiar with Ontario Brown at all? Because just before we leave this subject, if you watch the Notre Dame game, Ontario Brown had like 3 60, 70-yard plays in the game, but it's like he toiling in obscurity is not even a word for what the guys in the MAC do normally. And then on top of that, Northern Illinois versus even like, Toledo or some of the other schools that are more well known. So yeah, that dude, I think would be an excellent undrafted pickup for a team like Pittsburgh to add to the mix. He could win a job. It's not impossible. Good all around player, pass and run game, great pass protector. So anyway, that's the running back class, right?
Can I say one last thing real quickly is that I don't know what it is. I feel like when I watch him, I appreciate what he's doing. I just, how I said Giddens has that it factor. I like something about it, his running style. Omarion Hampton, he's a good back. I just don't know what it is. I wouldn't draft him where he's supposed to go. I can't give you a concrete reason why.
Can I give you a for instance? Because I think I know what it is.
Okay, what is it?
He and James Conner, former Pittsburgh Steeler, have something in common about their running style, and that is they have very good vision to find, the first cut through the hole, find the hole, take off, and then they just keep running until they hit an object that is powerful enough to take them down. But there is zero elusiveness. I mean, like, it got to be once I sort of like clued into this, then I was just like, I kept waiting. Will there be one run where he jukes a guy, or he like puts a foot in the ground and like cuts out offside the safety and tries to out angle him? Nope, through the hole, straight ahead until he hit something. And that was James Conner to a T. Like, James Conner at Pittsburgh would just be like, he'd get the ball and run upfield, and once he ran into something, that was it. So yeah, I think that's let's put it this way, in a player that's supposed to be that's supposed to be an elite, maybe the number 2 first round kind of a pick, that feels pretty scary to me. So
a talented player, just not where I would have a lot of guys over him, and that's no knock on him. It's a hell of a running back class, but just
Yeah.
And then Henderson, just real quick, Henderson's Jalen Warren revamped, in my opinion.
Boy, I mean, I just feel like he's a speed back a la Willie Parker. He is that thing I just described earlier, the catching and gathering and then taking off. He's not a natural receiver like Willie Parker was or wasn't, but he's 0.14 seconds in the 40 slower than Willie Parker. So for a speed back, you like 4.4 in the NFL is like not really that speedy. It's fast, but it's not like enough to like you can just hang your hat on that skill. That would be my thing. And he's somebody that, I know has been mocked to the Steelers quite a bit. So
And
anyway,
then
all right.
one more name really quick.
Oh, see, here we go.
And I won't spend much time on this guy at all because this is a guy that only carried the ball 13 times this year because he was lost to the entire year for injury. And I remember him more because of his 2023 tape and thought, why have I not heard anything about this guy this year? And then I realized he got hurt. Korey Merritt from Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
Very talented back who just unfortunately missed his entire like super duper season. Senior year. He had 6 years in college, so he's actually turning 24 here in like 3 days. So he'll be an older back. I don't know if he'll get drafted, but he's got a lot of talent to make some noise to kind of be one of those undrafted guys that rises up a depth chart and like actually finds a big workload at some point. He shook very talented all around type of guy.
He definitely showed up in the Shrine Bowl. He came in and kind of shook things up there a little bit, which I thought was pretty impressive.
So, but that's all I'll say. We can move on to the next need.
Right on. Well, another big challenge is it's a really weird kind of a wide receiver class because it doesn't necessarily have like these superstars deep at the top, but sort of the middle of it and the bottom of it, I feel like is full of guys that would be useful, maybe for purposes of tonight's discussion to try to wrap this up in a reasonable amount of time. Maybe it's better to focus on guys you think that you really, really like, but that are, could be fits for the Steelers' needs. I mean, and you might even think about a world where George Pickens isn't a Steeler next year, not 2025, but in 2026, right? So it could be that somebody duplicates that skill set, but you're drafting them a year early because they will do that kind of thing, of course.
I'll go quick because mine are a little off the wall. I'll just knock out Mika Egbuka. I think the Steelers would love him for what he would bring them this year. Not necessarily a Pickens replacement, but a slot who can go and do a little something after the catch. But he's a hell of a blocker. If you go and look up Judkins or Henderson highlights, it's probably him cracking the home run block for him.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying for months that they're going to draft. What wide receiver will they draft? The best blocker, because that's who they signed last year. Like Ben Skoronix, and they seem to be really obsessed with wide receivers that could block. So
then Marcus Golden's a stud. Tet McMillan's a stud. Those guys are a bit out of our price range. Just to look a little lower, Torrey Horton, stud, and Ricky White, I like a lot. I think they'll like Ricky White as well. Again, hell of a blocker, but
another big special teams guy.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And
not just as a returner, like everything.
Savion, because all three of us could say plenty on him, who we totally won't take for the mock tomorrow if anyone's watching, or 2 days.
You said we totally will. Is that what you said?
Oh, we totally won't if anyone's listening.
This isn't going to air. I'm strategically not airing these episodes until after we pick because
if I'm a gambler,
you can talk about him, Korey.
If I'm a betting man, Savion Williams will be a Steeler War Room pirate. Or not pirate.
Yeah, well, the thing that pisses me off, I'll interject in your time for 1 second if the senator will allow.
Oh, you've got it. I'm done after that.
The senator will.
The thing that pisses me off more than anything about the Steelers offseason is that they not only paid top dollar for a wide receiver in terms of a contract, but they also gave up a second-round pick. Because if they hadn't given up a second-round pick, I am writing Savion Williams' name in Sharpie on the card and just ready to hand it over to somebody in round 2. It irritating to me that without a second round pick, it so changes our strategy about the first round, and it's just
It
becomes
does.
now it's become this like huge hassle to try to figure out a way to trade down or whatever. So unless they already have a trade or two in place to either move down or to move George Pickens or something, or or TJ Watt for that matter with today's message. Maybe by the time this airs, PJ won't even be a Steeler anymore and we'll look silly. But I just feel like Savion Williams, I don't know. I'll talk about him in my time. I'll yield back to the gentleman from Florida.
Nick Nash is cool. I'd
Yeah.
actually, depending on how far he falls, it's a slow 40. I would go for Restrepo, Xavier Restrepo from Miami. I don't think he's that slow. I don't think he plays that slow. I
No.
feel like he's going to get hammered on that 40 time. That's a kind of gritty guy I would like to have, especially with a late pick. I feel like that's value there waiting to be had. But I'll hand it over to Jeremy.
Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
I'll throw this to
Mhm.
both of you. Oh no, I'll throw to Jeremy. Jeremy hasn't talked in a lot. Please, Jeremy, go for it.
Well, I agree with Korey on Restrepo. Well, you're asking that guy just to go be a warhammer in the middle of the field in the NFL. You're not asking him to like stretch defenses and stuff. You're asking him to get open, from the slot, which, yeah, his 40 time didn't look good, but all his agility numbers look freaking awesome. Big deal that he can't run super fast in a straight line for 40 yards. That this is the type of guy where I need him to make sure he gets the 7 yards for the first down. Like, that's what I'm drafting Restrepo to do. And he's got incredible hands too. Like, you go ask Cam Ward who he'd like to play with in the pros. Restrepo's at the top of the list. Like, that guy made a ton of plays for Cam Ward this year.
Well, although there's another wide receiver in this class who we also is going to have to love, so love equally. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, let's see here. There's a few guys. I'm a big Trey Harris fan. I think he gets a little overlooked because he's in the gimmicky Ole Miss offense, which, puts up a ton of yards and points, and they ask their receivers to run like 3 routes, for the most part. It's a go, a slant, and a stop for the most part. But he has really good hands. There was some advanced metric the other day, and I'm blanking on it, but he ran like 80. I won't even try to quote it because I'm going to mess it up. But like it was like the best statistic in the class for like yards run per route or something like that.
That's exactly. I was just about to say that's what it is. It's
okay.
It's the yards gained per route run.
Yes, thank you. I knew I was going to butcher the full thing, so I was like, I'm not going to try. But I really like Trey Harris, and if we were looking for a George Pickens replacement, assuming that he is not on the roster, like Trey Harris would be at the top of my list for him because he's actually a guy that blocks too.
Yeah.
When Pickens has been interested, he's a good run blocker. Kind of the same thing with Trey Harris, except he blocks all the time. He's George Pickens without the attitude to a degree. So he's one of my guys.
I really like him as well. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I really like Kyle Williams.
Well, that was the guy I was going to say. Kyle Williams was Cam Ward's dude in Washington. He was like the only guy Cam Ward had in Washington State.
Yeah. But like there is something to be said about guys that just get off the line as easily as they do and just have the defender at such a disadvantage. And he is like one of the top dudes in this draft class of, if you think I'm going here, the play's over. Like, there's been a few, like, I think there was a Senior Bowl highlight. I think he was Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl. I can't remember which one. Where he literally left this dude who was trying to guard him in the slot, like still in his stance, looking at the line of scrimmage, and he was already past him. That level of quickness is rare. And while he's not like a super awesome, like run after the catch dude,
well, he actually was
be a guy that,
believe it or not, he had one of the best numbers in yards after the catch, believe it or not.
Well, so I meant more athletically than anything. Like he's not like a super athlete after the catch, but he's a guy that once he's open, you're still not going to catch him because he's still a good enough athlete to run away from a lot of players. So
Yeah, good
Uh,
instincts, good instincts in
yeah,
the open field, as opposed
yeah.
to
So Kyle
Marion Hampton.
Williams is a player. Corey mentioned Ricky
Wait, who?
White.
I'm
I
sorry.
took
Who was? I talked over you. Who was the one you said before that? After Kyle
uh,
Williams?
um
Just now.
I didn't get to anyone after Kyle Williams. It was Trey Harris before Kyle.
Oh, I see. Okay, go. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm a big Ricky White believer. There's just something about that dude where he like, yeah, he didn't time the greatest, but like he's just that football dude that all 32 teams would love to have as like a third, fourth, or fifth receiver. Like I think he can do a lot of things. I compared him to Antonio Brown a little bit with just kind of the after or getting open type stuff that he does. It looks really good like that. So that's a dude. I'm trying to think here. You guys hit on some guys already. I will say I'm not as high on Elick Aomaner, the Stanford kid.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Like I know he tested great, but I didn't see like a great separator in college,
No.
and I don't know if that'll be
Although I mean that
compounded
was true.
upon.
That was true of Jaden Higgins as well. Really. I mean, those two are not about
Yeah.
separation. They're just fighters.
Right.
Jack Beck. Jack. Bash the same way. Really. They're all
Yeah.
in the same bucket.
Yeah. And I know you guys will probably crucify me for this, but I'm not near as high on Matthew Golden as everyone else is.
No, with the people who do the analytics in terms of statistics will tell you that he has got one of the worst profiles of anybody because
Yeah.
he wasn't really treated like the number one receiver. He doesn't have an early break. Like there's a lot of things about his game that make them wary of him in round one.
Yeah.
I
I don't know
like
if you can
him.
scroll down a little bit because your wide receiver list was really, really long.
By the way, big playoff performer, which that tends to stay in people's minds.
Well, I like him, and I'm historically bad with first round receivers, so that's probably a good sign for you guys.
Yeah, what Korey said.
Last thing I'll say, and he's a guy I drafted in the drafted team thing this year. I think Dominic Lovett he's one of these ultra talented dudes that has not had great quarterback play. Like when he was at Missouri, I actually thought his stock was going to keep going up. And then he transferred, just had okay years at Georgia. But I see a lot to like and work with there, especially as a guy who's going to go later than, well, like if we're talking about 6th, 7th round wide receivers that we might stick on this team, at least that's a dude I know that is super talented, he does have some drop issues or whatever, but he is quick and fast, and that's something I can at least work with in the NFL. So
But blanking on his name, a guy just like that. It's the Georgia, the other
Arian Smith.
Just like him, I think. Not just like him, but I'd put him in a similar boat to a lot of this.
If Arian Smith could catch, he'd be DK Metcalf. I mean, that's really where it's at. All right, is it my turn now?
Yeah, it's yours, bud.
I probably like more wide receivers in this class, I think, than most people. I would say this about the way that Korey and I have seen wide receivers. I think you're talking about it last night and tonight, that we have a little bit of a difference of opinion about what would be the fit for the Steelers.
Sure.
I feel like, people tell me that Arthur Smith's offense is really designed for slot receivers. It's, focal. They don't run three wides, but they run a slot to the side that the tight end is on, or that the other wide receivers on. Like they do things to get the slot receivers the ball, but it didn't seem to work very well last year. I mean, maybe they just didn't have that number two that really, really worked. But for me, like, yeah, they might be interested in drafting Ibuka, but Ibuka to me is slot only, and a guy that, much like Matthew Golden, that was never the guy. So yeah, a lot of intangibles. Like I would love him in round 4. I don't think I'd dig him at the end of round 1 or the beginning of round 2. That's all I would say about that. But otherwise, I can't say anything bad about him. He's a good football player. The guys that I'm higher on, I think, than most people are that we haven't talked about are Andrew Armstrong, the outside receiver from
Arkansas.
from Arkansas. Actually, they got both Arkansas guys, Tesla and Andrew Armstrong. Armstrong was the guy that was the go-to for them this year. That, when they needed to play, he was the guy that delivered very long arms, big catch radius, very sure-handed. And it was reported originally that he ran 4.37 at his pro day. Then later they changed that to like 4.49 or 4.5 or something. It's like it was a weird discrepancy. So I don't know which number is correct. I can just tell you that he's a guy that will be a valuable member of some team as a possession. Like, to me, for the Steelers, having a guy, ideally they need a guy that can get open against press coverage and on the outside if needed, who is always going to be open and who's going to make a play on third down to move the chains. And you've discussed some other guys already in this class who are good at that. But I feel like, Armstrong is a guy who can be very good at that with some catch radius, maybe, especially if it boils down to getting somebody with a late pick. Isaac Tesla had an amazing lower football level career at Wofford, and then went to Arkansas, was a little bit buried on the depth chart and just exploded. Incredible hands. I'm pretty sure I read that he's never had a drop in his college career. So,
Wow.
and if you watch his highlight reel, especially the one from Wofford, I think it was, he's making he looks like he's making circus catches on purpose. Like he's that guy, So I feel like after watching, a series of wide receivers for the Steelers with with bad drops, that might be a nice thing to have. And he tested out of the gym, so he's a 4.3 guy who has amazing hands. He's not a do-it-all guy, but I feel like as a middle of the field option to go along with the outside guys the Steelers have currently, he would really work. And I like Trey Harris and some of the other guys you guys mentioned. I'll just say Dante Thornton for a second. I expected when I watched his tape to see strictly, I'm running go balls and and I'm really good at it. But I think it's better than that. For all of his people talking about Nico, the quarterback for Tennessee. How do you say his last name? Not sure.
Amaliva or something.
Yeah, I believe that. For all of the hype about him as a 7, he's a big 7-on-7 star, right? Before going to college, his deep ball accuracy is not all that great. So here's first thing I look for in a deep ball threat. So if you're a speedy, tall guy whose height adjusted speed score is off the charts, and you get a lot of deep targets and you make a lot of plays on deep balls, what I want to know is your quarterback delivering balls to you that are like dropping in your hands, or do you have to locate the ball and you make it look easy for them? Because I go back to the Steelers, Mike.
Mike Wallace.
Yeah, to go back to Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace, faster than shit. Horrible ball tracking skills. Like he could make a deep ball throw that was reasonably accurate, but just not right on target. He could make it look like it was overthrown by 15 yards or in the wrong direction, and you just be like, wow, what happened? He's just not a natural center fielder. Dante Thornton, really good ball tracker, very good hands. He catches the ball away from his body. He's not like I'm a deep threat and I don't really run any other routes, so I just created the ball when it comes to me or whatever. And I see hints that he could do more. I think it just wasn't asked to do a lot more. Like Korey and I were talking last night about George Pickens being able to do more, and I feel like Dante Thornton is like a faster George Pickens in terms of, or closer to DK Metcalf in terms of the style player that he is. But I feel like he could do more than what DK Metcalf can do, and he's blazingly fast for big receiver. So somebody that I like. And then Savion Williams, I'm preaching to the choir a little bit. I think you guys are pretty into him as well. For the Steelers in particular, you add him into the mix of your running game because I think he was the best Wildcat quarterback that I saw last year in terms of you could snap the ball to him and he can legit throw it and he can legit run with it. He can legit hand it off and operate an offense and call protections or whatever. So he's a legit quarterback prospect. He was at one time, but he's a big dude who I think he first came to our attention, Korey, because in that big TCU year, they had him running, in the red zone. He'd be the guy that'd be singled up on one side and you'd throw him a a jump ball, a slot fade, and he would just moss a guy. So it's like, okay, he's big enough and has ball skills enough and tracking to moss a guy in the red zone. And then he was, like this year, he was like running deep routes and beating guys down the field because he's incredibly fast for his size. But his secret sauce, the magic potion, his skill that will get him into heaven is the open field running. Since Santonio Holmes, I've never seen anybody in the college game who's a wide receiver who he's almost impossible to tackle in the open field. He made plays that looked like they were going to be 2-yard gains and just turned them into a punt return. And it's just to do that at his size. Can't believe that people are talking about him as a third rounder. He is somebody that if on my board is at least a late first rounder, maybe higher than that. So I love him as a fit for. He adds something to your crazy run mad Arthur Smith offense from day one, but he isn't Cordell or Patterson. He can do a lot more than that. He can take a slant to the house. He can beat you deep. And like Cordell Patterson, you're not throwing him a slot fade and expecting him to beat a good cornerback, but you could do that with Savion Williams. So he would be somebody who could work out of the slot if while you still have DK Metcalf and George Pickens. And if Pickens leaves at the end of the year, I think you could somebody that could transition to the outside, and you'd be pretty happy to have him as part of your rotation. So that's my last word on him. Do we need to? Do we see ourselves drafting an edge? You want to just make it real quick? Maybe one guy.
I'll be quick on the edge. There's a couple guys that I like above Princely, and we're not going to take any of them. So it's like I love Donovan, I love Princely, but once you get below that, I'm really not a fan of. I wouldn't pound on the table for any one of those dudes.
Yeah,
it's just kind of a Baron Sorrell. I think has a little juice, but that'll be it for me.
Yeah. How about you, Jeremy?
I mean, I drafted him and pissed quite a few people off in draft the team apparently, but I really like Antoine Powell Ryland from Virginia Tech. If we're talking about a guy that we just want to throw on the field and say go get him, stick him, that's a kid that can do it because he's like almost 6'4", like 255, 260-ish, and to have that type of get off. And to be able to affect the pass rusher, I mean, I think he had like 15 and a half sacks in the ACC this year, something crazy.
Yeah.
Which we all heard about Donovan Izariku, from Boston College, but not near as much about Powell and Rilo. But that's a guy, if we're sitting there in round 4 or something, and we're thinking, man, we've missed out on a lot of the other guys that we like. And, if we don't think TJ Watt's going to be here beyond this year, that's at least a guy I'd consider drafting just if I'm thinking more than just next year.
Mm-hmm. By the way, the biggest testers in the class for I use this thing called the Waldo formula. I've modified it a little bit because Waldo is a guy that used to write a lot on Football's Future and came up with this method of sort of isolating 3-4 edge rushers that works pretty well for edge rushers of all kinds. And I've sort of become a real advocate of it because I feel like it's even for other positions, it tends to be very instructive for explosion numbers. But Donovan Izariku had the best, was the best sort of bendy candidate. Antoine Powell Ryland was another one that has a lot of power. And aside from a couple of the top guys, but the one that tested extremely well at both was Elijah Ponder from Cal Poly. And he's actually on the youngish side for some of these small school players who stayed at the small school tend to be older guys by the time they come into the draft. They're always looking for an opportunity to do a little better, use up all their eligibility. But he's a guy that has a lot of bend and also has a lot of power and is, I think greatly untapped potential compared to what some guys were. And at the Shrine practices, at least he looked like he's somebody that, maybe is ascending. But yeah, I actually, the one guy that I don't think he'll be drafted, but that I would love to see him in camp because he's sort of a unique skill set. And that's Aiden Huntington from Tulane. Huntington is a 280-pound basically an edge that who also was an interior pass rusher. And once again, I feel like your backup defensive linemen need to be cats who could play, 3 tech or 5 tech in against the run or when you're in goal line or whatever, but whose special skill is that they can rush the passer from from over the center all the way to a wide 9 if they have to. And that's a guy who did exactly that at both Tulane and the school he was at before that, which Korey, it's one of your schools you played against, I think. Louisiana Monroe, I want to say, is his school.
That was ULL. We played against ULL and
ULM.
ULM. I did not play against ULM at least, but
I thought in the spring season you guys played against them.
no, spring season was all FCS.
Oh yeah, no, they were FCS then. They moved up. Pretty sure.
ULM.
Yeah.
No, they were
Oh
there.
no, you would know
That's
better
when
than
they
I.
had-
Anyway, that's enough time spent on this. I mean, unless they move TJ Watt, in which case, all bets are off. I feel like the only guy I feel I would bet my job on for an early round pick would be Donovan Izurika. So like if on some odd chance between now and the real draft, TJ Watt gets moved because he's, giving us the peace out or whatever, and you ended up with like a first round pick, that would be the only guy to me that I'd be like, I plug that guy in. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler immediately. So I'm down with that. But otherwise, it's a little bit of a, you got guys with red flags. You got guys who are not really that great a fit for, 3-4 outside player. And maybe Mike Tomlin leaves, you're going to switch to be a 4-3 team anyway. Who knows? Okay. All right, guys. We're it took us a while, but we're rolling, right? Not too much left. Let's talk about left tackle. That's going to be an easy one because there's not that many of them. I think Korey and I are sort of similar. Jeremy, why don't you tell us what you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've had questions kind of about the top left tackles and, perceived top left tackles in this class for a while. There's a reason why I didn't take Kelvin Banks for the Chiefs, in our mock board draft. I just didn't see the player I wanted to out of Kelvin Banks, to be a franchise left tackle. I like Will Campbell. I think you can bet on him for the most part to develop and be a solid left tackle, but I don't know about franchise. Simmons was only healthy for 5 games this year, and he didn't face the top level of competition by any means.
Yeah.
But he had dominant tape against those teams. So, I mean, that's why he's being regarded up there. Just a guy that that I took for the Chiefs, in our mock board draft. I'm a big fan of Anthony Belton. I know he's not a top left tackle in this class, but I think he's very capable of playing that. Just something watching his tape. He's an easy mover for a guy his size. That's why I liked him.
Well, the thing you get with him is if he doesn't work out at left tackle, it can be kick-ass guard or right tackle.
Yeah. So
I love
you
it.
almost have an insurance policy there where it's he's a good football player, and if he doesn't work at left tackle, you just kick him inside, which would honestly be great for the Steelers in a sense, because I really don't get the sense that Isaac Seumalo is going to be here beyond this next year either.
Yeah, I'm not even sure he's going to be
more
here.
offensive. Just more offensive line in flux. Gotta love it. For a team that's tried so hard to fix its offensive line these past few years.
Well, if you had,
I like Logan Brown, a guy that you highlighted. I saw him play. I think he can play some left tackle. Just needs some more work to be a left tackle, but he's the type of athlete. Is actually former 5-star guy too. So he's got pedigree there. I can't remember where he initially committed and then ended up at Kansas, but it was a decently big school. Might have been Alabama, crazy enough. I cannot remember.
I think that's possible. I can look here, but
just another guy that I see that you have highlighted there. That's a guy I was doing my research on for both board exercises, thinking, man, this guy's a really good mover for 6'5", 310. And then the last guy would
by the way, Wisconsin was the school that he started at.
Wisconsin. And then the last guy that you have more on interior offensive line right tackle, I think Bryce Cable could potentially play some left tackle. Needs some work, but he is the rare type of athlete that I think could work out there. Needs some work for sure. But a guy that I did take this guy and draft a team this year, but very athletic, 6'5", hovering right around 300 pounds. So he's going to need to bulk up a little bit, but he's got some great tools for a developmental guy.
I think he'd be a great guy to have on your team because he's sort of like the super can cover all 5 positions on game day. Like I think he's gonna, get in the league. I think he's played. Is he one of those guys that played all 5 positions at one point? I think he has.
I think he played everything but center, if I remember correctly when I was doing my
Played center
research,
in the All-Star game though, right?
So
it's
that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. But I love how quick he is off the line. It's rare for a guy who's 6'5" to move that fast off the line and still get movement.
Yeah,
that's what I really loved about him.
Well, great athlete. That's the thing about Karbowsky and Logan Brown. There's a lot to work with there in terms of their athleticism. They're really like Belton isn't a great athlete, but he's just like a tough guy who's a good football player, right? But Karbowsky and Logan Brown definitely share that thing. I'm going to let Korey go last.
Mike Munchak back to develop those.
Oh my God!
Or...
Don't I wish? I would settle for Korey Karbowsky. I'm going to let him go last because I know offensive line is really his thing, and probably he's watched more offensive line than anybody. So I'm going to let him go last on left tackle and first on the next segment. But for me, just the one guy I wanted to mention is S18. I drafted him in the Steeler Fury board draft this year. He's a guy that wasn't even playing football 4 years ago. He wasn't allowed. His mother didn't allow him to play football. Gotta love him. Gotta love a kid like that. And it was a tense family situation. He was being raised by his non-biological parents, and a lot of issues going back and forth. And so he was very loyal to the people that were parenting him. But he eventually started playing. Here's the great part of the story. Last year, 2023, he was either the lowest graded or bottom 3 offensive tackles in the entirety of college football FBS from PFF in terms of his grade. Primarily because he was just like he went from being like he played 5 games, started 5 games or something at a junior college, 6 games, and then moved to Washington State while Cam Ward was there. And if you watch Cam Ward at Washington State, you saw a guy that was just like running for his life, kind of like Shedeur Sanders was this year. So flip the switch to this year, and he led FBS in his passing grade, and I think he had one of the best grades overall. He's for as guy as big as he is, he's a giant. He's a 6'5", 327 pound or something like that. You would think he'd be better at run blocking, but he hasn't really quite maximized his ability in that area. He's still pretty good, but he's more like still operating like a positional blocker rather than just using his size on people. But as a pass protector, man, he's got that dancing bare feet. He's able to mirror guys off the edge and win a lot. So I tried to put, me personally, whenever I was like putting a list together for this exercise, I just thought, I'm not sure where the Steelers are going to be able to take a left tackle candidate in this class, but I feel like they should get one, whether it's a developmental one or one that's more ready to play. And it'd be nice to have one, early, middle, and late in the draft. And I think that's, the ones that are sort of selected here. But I'm going to turn it over to Korey Karbowsky, who's aside from being a long snapper expert, he really has studied offensive linemen. So all yours, buddy.
Take it away.
One big first thing I'll say, I don't care if Will Campbell had 40 whatever inch arms or whatever. I would have been out on him anyways. He does not pass the hip tests. Like he doesn't seem very fluid. And you guys know that typically I do end up liking the Duke Manyweather guys, but I can't do it with him. Just one quick thing for him. His arm length wasn't the thing that bothered me at all. No.
It was, I watched the South Carolina game, right? By the way, one of the games of the year, not the game of the year in college football. And he got run around with every possible move that you could lose on as an offensive lineman. He got beat by speed on the outside on the short set. He got run around and bent on a deeper set when he started like deeper set. And then when he got his kick set was too deep, then the guy cut back inside against him, gave him a rip and came back to the inside. And then when he did picked up stunts and he was blocking an interior lineman, he got power rushed into the lap of the quarterback. And I'm like, this guy is supposed to be the number one left tackle prospect in the draft. And it's like that's worrisome to me because you'd think, well, maybe he's just not a left tackle in the league. He'll kick inside. But if you have trouble with powerful defensive tackles, playing them one-on-one, it's going to be tough life for you at guard. So to me, he's got to go to a team that, puts its offensive linemen, gives them angles and on the move, and doesn't ask them to straight up block a two-gap defender. And I don't think he's feet are good enough for the outside. His hips are not good enough, maybe is a better way to say it. And I don't think he's got enough power inside. So it worries me. I think he's supposed to be a very hard worker. He's the thing you said about Jordan earlier, I think applies to him. He's supposed to be one of the hardest workers in the draft. And so I think there's a potential to get better at that stuff. But yeah, I don't know if sometimes you either have the hips or you don't when you're a big guy like that. Sorry, that's my big long introduction on him. And even though
I mean, he's a big topic. I think there's a chance that he slides down a little. I don't know if it'll be all the way to the Steelers, but Josh Simmons and Josh Connerly, I'm kind of on the same thing where like they're fine. I don't think they'll be all pros. I actually like Kelvin Banks a little more, not off of this year's film. This year's film has
disaster this year.
a lot of warts, but if you look back when he was a freshman, or he might have been a redshirt, whatever he was, the first year he played, he looked damn good then. It's not as good as like a Deion Walker, but he more than held his own when he was like at his youngest. So it's one where I don't know the full story with. I don't know if there were injuries. I don't know if it was a work ethic thing, but I doubt we're going to be taking him there anyways. Ariante is Ursery, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Ariante Ursery. I like him. I think he's like super Broderick. It's kind of like a lot of what Broderick, what I liked about Broderick and a little of what I didn't like about Broderick. I kind of like a little more with Ursery, and I like the stuff that I didn't like with Broderick isn't as bad on Ursery. He's just kind of like the floor is a little higher, the ceiling's a little higher. That's the kind of player that I think you hope Broderick turns into. So, that's good with me. It's a solid player, good run blocker, good in space. The main guy that's left there is Charles Grant. He is my number one offensive lineman, period. He is and I think, Will, you have him the same if I was reading those.
Absolutely. He's my number one offensive lineman as well.
He has extraordinary feet, disciplined hands. He has great hips on contact. He's one of those guys where if he was playing at, Iowa or Alabama or Georgia, I feel like he would be looked at completely differently.
He'd be a top five pick. He'd be a top five pick if he played at those schools. But also, because he wasn't recovered enough to play at the Senior Bowl, he didn't even get that bump like Ray Zabel got. Because Zabel, they're talking about him now in the first round. And it's like Charles Grant would easily have been there, I think, had he shown up and played well there.
I think it was like, last year, and I think Frazier made me look good on this. I was like, I don't care. I'd take Zach Frazier with the top 15 pick. You can talk about value all you want. I would rest easy of that. It's the same thing with Charles Grant. If I was picking number 10 in this draft, I would go Charles Grant and not lose a second of sleep. He's going to be a dude.
Yeah. The wrestling background plus he's one of the fastest 310 pound guys you'll ever see. He ran 4.95 at 300 pounds. I mean, in his pro day, he ran slightly slower than that at a higher weight. But it's like, man, there's only so many dudes that run sub 5 at 300 pounds and also have skill and 35-inch arms and whatever. So go ahead.
Yep. I'll loop over. Gray Zabel's a similar type of prospect, just because small school guy. If NDSU is known for producing guys, at least. Even though William and Mary, shout out Colby Sorsdahl. I was all over him a couple years ago.
Yep.
But Gray Zabel, he's just gonna be a good player. I don't know how much there is to say on him. He's just gonna be a damn good player. could be guard, could be center.
Man, was he
Probably
good at the Senior Bowl?
yeah.
He was easily the best offensive lineman at the
Yeah.
Senior Bowl. Like, how do you come in from North Dakota State and do that? That's wild. Good for him.
He's gonna be a stud. I don't like Tyler Booker. Kind of the I don't think he has the hips. He kind of just cannot move laterally. I'm sure some team could make him work. I wouldn't want to be the one to try and do it. And then Donovan Jackson. I This is a guy I'd be willing to put some money on him never having he'll be on the same team his whole career. He's one of those dudes who's never going to be allowed to free agency. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean he's an all pro. That doesn't mean he's a Hall of Famer. But whatever team takes him, he's going to be on that team for 12 to 14 years, and it's going to be one of those ones where like it's a really hard guy to replace. He's just rock solid. He could probably play tackle. I think he's best as like let him go to like a Miami team or San Francisco where they run a ton of wide zone and you get him on the move, and because he's pretty strong too and he can also move. That's just the guy. He's not going to play for any other team than the team he drafted. He's going to be a stud.
Yeah, I dig him. I'm not really sure. I guess it's just that people don't value guards the way that they once
Yeah.
did. But man, that's to have him. Like I said, right now he's running like a solid second round pick. Of course, if, we're drafting for a team that doesn't have a second round pick. So what are you gonna do? Anyway.
and then one last name I'll throw out there at offensive lineman, because I've had my eye on him kind of all year. Jalen Rivers from Miami.
Yeah.
6'5", 310-pound guy, can play multiple positions. That's very valuable in the NFL. I'm not saying he's going to get drafted super high, but like if he's sitting there in like the 5th round and we're looking for a guy who can eventually start and I think back up 4 positions on game day, not being center, be the 5th.
Yeah.
I think he's got some value there. Very athletic, gets off the line well. That's just one of my guys.
One last one real quick because I missed him. I don't give a shit about Willie Lampkin's size. I'm taking him as a backup, and maybe he can step in 2 years. He can play. He can play. That's just that. I'm not buying into the size thing. He handled it just fine in college. I'd bet on him figuring it out in the NFL.
Like, I don't know if, based on the number of picks the Steelers have right now, if they're going to draft a guard or if we will in this exercise, but I think underrated interior offensive line class. Like there's some names that I don't even really have highlighted, but I'll give you an example. Isaac Bunyan. I don't know if you guys, once again, Rutgers, right? So toiling in obscurity. He was a defensive lineman, not only the first 2 years or first 3 years of his college career, but up through spring camp. There's an interview of him on YouTube that's from the 2024 spring practice. And they're asking him about the defensive line this year and how they're going to do and whatever. Excuse me. And he's, like the leader of the defensive line. Well, anyway, in the summertime, they're like, dude, we had a conversation. We were thinking about switching you to offensive line. And he was like, okay, like, never really played offensive line. They're like, okay, well, it's no problem. We're going to put you in a guarded practice and we'll see how it goes. He ended up starting from week 1 the entire season at guard and looked pretty dang good at it. And the reason he came up was I was watching film of Derek Harmon and I'm like, Isaac Bunyan is literally stoning Derek Harmon, is going to be a 1st-round pick. In this game where it's like the 4th game he's ever played, or fifth game he's ever played at guard. So he's just like one of those dudes that's sort of a barrel. Tested, like his explosion numbers and testing were outstanding. So as you would expect, because defensive linemen are generally more athletic than the offensive linemen. But I have a feeling that there's a guy that's going to be an undrafted free agent and go to some team and make them happy. Thomas Perry, maybe not what the Steelers need, because I think he's probably going to end up being a center in the league. But another incredible athlete, small schooler that most people didn't know who he was. But I feel like he and Jackson Slater really made some money in mobile, and they'll do well. Really love Clay Webb as a run blocker. He's Alan Faneca, man, as a run blocker, but he's also Alan Faneca as a pass protector. So that's probably not the right choice going forward. But yeah, if he comes to your team, he's the guy you run behind on 4th and short with the game on the line. Jalen Rivers, I just felt like he struggled so much at times this year. So I do think he can play multiple positions. I'm not sure that he's going to be great at any of them, which worries me a little bit. And
yeah, that's why I think he's a developmental guy for sure. He's got tools, but
the other guys you guys mentioned, of course, I think all of those are good. I only have one more, and maybe he's the one that maybe would be a proper target for the Steelers because of where he'll be available. Lost in the shuffle, Marcus Tate from Clemson was, like some of these other guys we talked about, considered to be a very high-ranked prospect last year. Didn't come out and went back and got injured partway through the year. But I feel like he's a guy that fits what the Steelers do, and is the kind of guard that they've drafted previously. He's a bigger guy who can move, which is the kind of seems to be a profile for Arthur Smith. So don't have a lot more exactly to say about that, but I can tell you that his tape is very, very good, way better than a free agent. Like, to me, he's a mid-round guy in reality, and probably will get picked by some team. And a lot of people who are these amateur drafters like us will be like, "Who is that guy? Never heard of him." Or they're just drafting him because he's from Clemson, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Hey, that's all for this first half of the Steelers mock draft war room. Build the board. Join us on the next episode for the second half. I've still got lots of positions left to go, a long ways to go. Glad you're with us. See you on the next episode of the Steeler Fury Pittsburgh Steelers Show pre-draft extravaganza.
Steelers